The morning that never ended. The Lizbeth Medina case. On the morning of December 5th, 2023, the town of Edna, Texas was already dressed for the holidays. Christmas lights lined the streets. Schools were preparing for seasonal events. And later that evening, the town's annual lighted Christmas parade was set to take place, a moment many students looked forward to all year. Among them was 16-year-old Lizbeth Medina. Lizbeth was a student at Edna High School, known by classmates as energetic, kind, and deeply involved in school activities. She was a cheerleader, someone who showed up, not just for events, but for people. That Tuesday morning began like any other. Lizbeth and her mother, Jacqueline Medina, parted ways at their apartment earlier in the day. There was nothing unusual about the goodbye. No arguments. No visible tension. Lizbeth was expected to go to school and later attend the parade with her cheer team. But she never arrived. When Lizbeth failed to show up at school, concern began to build quietly. At first, it was subtle. Unanswered messages, calls going straight to voicemail. By the afternoon, something felt wrong. As evening approached and the parade began, Lizbeth was still nowhere to be found. Jacqueline returned home later that day, likely expecting to find her daughter inside, maybe running late, maybe distracted. Instead, what she encountered was a moment no parent can prepare for. Inside the apartment bathroom, Lizbeth Medina was found unresponsive in the bathtub. Emergency services were called immediately. First responders arrived at the Cottonwood Apartments in Edna, but there was nothing they could do. Lizbeth was pronounced dead at the scene. The celebration outside the home that night stood in stark contrast to what was unfolding inside. A Christmas parade continued through town, while a family's world stopped completely. Police quickly determined this was not an accident. The scene showed signs of violent injury, and investigators classified the case as a capital murder investigation. Within hours, Edna transformed from a quiet holiday town into the center of a growing homicide investigation. Roads near the apartment complex were secured. Detectives began canvassing the area, and by the next morning, the name Lizbeth Medina was being spoken across Texas. For investigators, the most urgent question was clear. Who had been inside that apartment after Lizbeth was last seen alive? And how did a normal school morning turn into a homicide before sunset? As investigators examined the apartment, details began to emerge. Lizbeth's injuries were consistent with sharp force trauma, indicating she had been attacked. The positioning of her body in the bathtub raised additional concerns, suggesting the scene may have been altered after the fatal injuries occurred. This detail mattered. In homicide investigations, staging can indicate panic, attempted concealment, or an effort to delay discovery. It also suggests the person responsible had time, a lot of time inside the home, time to act, and time to leave. Detectives focused on timeline reconstruction. They confirmed Lizbeth had last been seen alive that morning after parting ways with her mother. There were no signs of forced entry reported publicly, which raised difficult possibilities. Either the door had been unlocked, or Lizbeth may have encountered someone she did not immediately perceive as a threat. As the investigation unfolded, police released images of a person of interest captured on surveillance footage. The images showed a man walking through the apartment complex area around the time Lizbeth would have been home alone. The release of these images was strategic. Investigators were asking the public to help identify the individual while they continued tracking digital and physical evidence behind the scenes. Less than a week later, that effort paid off. Lizbeth's phone was nowhere to be found, but 4 days after the incident, Lizbeth's friend and boyfriend got replies from her phone to messages they had sent earlier. They alerted authorities, who got an emergency disclosure and began to track the location of the phone. On December 9, 2023, authorities arrested Rafael Govea Romero, a 23-year-old man, in Schulenburg, Texas, approximately 60 miles from Edna. According to law enforcement, Romero's cell phone data placed him in the area at the time of the crime. Additional evidence reportedly connected him to the apartment complex. Romero was charged with capital murder, a charge reserved for the most serious criminal cases under Texas law. As more information surfaced, it became clear that Romero had a criminal history. He was previously on probation related to a burglary case in another Texas town. Investigators also examined whether a prior burglary reported at the Medina residence weeks earlier had any connection to the homicide. Authorities were careful in their language, emphasizing that the investigation was ongoing and that charges reflect allegations, not a conviction. But for the Medina family and the Edna community, the arrest did not bring relief. Only a painful clarity that Lizbeth's death was the result of intentional violence. Vigils were held. Purple ribbons, representing her school colors, appeared across town. Classmates described a girl who had plans, friends, and dreams, all cut short in a place she should have been safest. The case now moved from investigation into the legal system. But questions remained. Why Lizbeth? Why that day? And could anything have been done to prevent it? As the case progressed through the courts, attention shifted from the immediate crime scene to the broader impact of Lizbeth Medina's death. Her mother, Jacqueline, later spoke publicly about the moment she found her daughter, describing it as the most devastating experience of her life. Her words reflected what many families of violent crime victims express: shock, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of loss that no legal outcome can erase. For the Edna community, the murder shattered a sense of safety. This was not a crime that happened in isolation or secrecy. It occurred during a normal school day, in a residential apartment, in a town where people knew each other. The reality forced difficult conversations about home security, community awareness, and how vulnerable moments can exist even in familiar places. Legally, Romero entered a plea of not guilty, and the case proceeded through pretrial phases. Prosecutors relied on digital evidence, surveillance footage, and forensic findings. Defense attorneys emphasized due process and the presumption of innocence. As with many high-profile cases, public attention fluctuated, intense in the early days, quieter as proceedings moved slowly. But for Lizbeth's family, time did not soften the loss. Her story became a reminder of something true crime often reveals too late. That tragedy does not announce itself. It enters quietly. It looks ordinary. And by the time warning signs become clear, damage has already been done. This case also highlighted how modern investigations now depend heavily on technology, cell phone tracking, surveillance cameras, and digital timelines. Tools that can narrow suspects quickly, but also raise questions about privacy, prevention, and response. For viewers, Lizbeth Medina's story is not just about a single crime. It is about a morning that felt normal, a community that trusted routine, and how violence can intersect with everyday life without warning. Her name now lives beyond Edna, not as a statistic, but as a person whose life mattered. And while the legal system continues its work, the responsibility of remembrance belongs to everyone who hears her story. What does this case teach us? Cases like this leave us with questions that have no simple answers. How could an ordinary morning turn into a tragedy before the day was over? How could something so devastating happen in a place that felt familiar and safe? The truth is, many serious crimes don't begin with obvious danger. They begin during routine moments, school days, work days, quiet hours at home, when no one expects their life to change forever. The story of Lizbeth Medina reminds us that safety is not just about where we are, but about awareness, access, and accountability. It shows how violence can intersect with everyday life without warning, and how quickly normal routines can be disrupted. This case also highlights the role of modern investigation. Technology, community tips, and digital evidence helped move the case forward. But these tools only come into play after harm has already occurred. Prevention still depends on people, on noticing concerns, securing living spaces, and speaking up when something feels wrong. There are no guarantees in life, and awareness does not undo loss. But awareness does matter. It helps communities respond faster. It helps families ask better questions. And sometimes, it helps prevent the next tragedy. Most importantly, Lizbeth Medina was more than a case file or a headline. She was a daughter, a student, a young person with plans and a future. Remembering her means recognizing that behind every true crime story is a real life that mattered. If this story encourages even one person to stay alert, to check in, or to act sooner when something feels wrong, then it serves a purpose beyond telling what happened. Because true crime isn't only about understanding how lives ended. It's about understanding how they were lived, and how we protect those still here.